This episode is brought to you by iZotope. Our friends over at iZotope create the most thoughtfully and intuitively designed software for audio repair, mixing, and mastering. I use their tools every day for the podcast, and I love it. And I think you will too. Go over to iZotope.com and check it out. That's iZotope.com. iZotope. Use the code FRET10 at checkout for a 10% discount. That's all caps, FRET, and the number 10.
Allow me to live and breathe like a man.
You've heard his words on classic albums like Pacific Ocean Blue and Friends. His 1969 collaboration with Brian Wilson, A World of Peace Must Come, gained almost legendary status as one of pop's most storied lost albums, before being resurrected to great acclaim by Light in the Attic in 2008. Now you're cordially invited to take a trip into the mind of poet and songwriter Stephen J. Kalinich. Heyday Again Records presents I Love My Life, a postcard from one of the last standing poets of peace and excitation. Order your copy today. I Love My Life by Stephen J. Kalinich and Friends. You'll see why heavy hitters like Brian Wilson, Dennis Wilson, Paul McCartney, Steve Cropper, P.F. Sloan, and Diana Ross have all worked with him. I Love My Life by Stephen J. Kalinich. Order today at realgonemusic.com. Again, that's realgonemusic.com. Something that you said, Marilyn, which I'm quoting you directly. People say he had a nervous breakdown, but I don't believe it was so, because he was able to resume his music almost immediately.
The next day, it was a panic attack.
Right.
It was a panic attack.
Everybody wants to make big things out of nothing.
But with Brian, the panic attack would be probably 10 times worse than a normal panic attack.
Right.
Right. I mean, because he was so demonstrative like that. I don't know what happened on that airplane or whatever, but who knows what he said? Get me off. But that wasn't a nervous breakdown.
Yeah.
No.
I know, nervous breakdown, you have to be hospitalized.
Welcome to another episode of Discograffiti's wildly in-depth Beach Boys series and Your Dreams Come True, where Brian Wilson freaks like you and me get our chance to delve deep into the barely believable history and prodigious discography of my favorite band of all time, and also coincidentally the best, along with a slew of over 50 top-shelf guests, ranging from musicians inspired by their work, family members, documentary directors, songwriting collaborators, Beach Boys authors, producers, touring band members, and for good measure, some of the Beach Boys themselves. I'm your host, Dave Gebrow, and special thanks goes out to co-producers Chuck Granata, Dennis Dykin, and Mark Freed, without whom this series would not have happened. And in this episode, we'll be turning our spray cans on the HONEYS, along with our special guests, Marilyn Wilson-Rutherford and Ginger Blake. Here's just a few of the many things that Marilyn and Ginger discuss in this podcast. A truly funny Keystone Cop-style open in the director's cut only, what the HONEYS were like before they bumped into Brian Wilson, the amazing way station for rock and roll talent that was the Rovell household, and the ways in which Brian fundamentally changed Marilyn's family for the better, how Marilyn feels about Mike Love's current touring version of the Beach Boys, an in-depth discussion of their first few classic 45s, and a talk about how much of an inspiration Marilyn was in Brian's music and lyrics. If you're a Beach Boys superfan like me, you'll want to turn this free version off right now and opt for the director's cut of this episode on our Patreon page, which features 21 additional minutes of essential material. And you can find it in our Patreon shop for mere pennies at patreon.com/discograffiti/shop. Or better yet, just subscribe for access to the complete versions of all our shows. I recommend the lieutenant tier at the very least, so you can access those director's cuts, because they include every last moment that was intended for these episodes. But it's actually the major tier that you want if you want it all. Discograffiti tells a story each week, and that story is 4 episodes long. And that's what you get as a major. In fact, as you'll see, the Monday bonus episodes are going to be most of the best stuff. But even if you're on the fence, just head over there, because it's finally free to become a basic member. And you don't want to miss being notified about every single one of these episodes. Because coming up, we got an interview with Lenny Waronker, Denny Tedesco and his incredible new documentary, The Immediate Family, Mike Love, Al Jardine, Bruce Johnston, Tony Asher, Jimmy Webb, Kim Fowley, Phil Ramone, Paul Tanner, Larry Knechtel, Don Randy, Dominic Priori, Bob Irwin, Mark Lynette, Billy Strange, Hal Blaine, Larry Levine, the 4 Freshmen's manager Bill Wagner, Carol Kay, plus an incredibly special Graham Nash deep dive, in which Graham himself rates and discusses everything he's ever released. That means solo, CSN, CSNY, CNN, and for good measure, Crosby's If I Could Only Remember My Name. So don't miss out. Open up your listening app right now and subscribe. And away we go then. When one thinks of singing siblings who teamed up with their cousin to unlock a unique harmonic blend that graced classic surf singles back in early 1960s Los Angeles, I know, only one group comes to mind: the HONEYS. But aside from the world's first female surfing vocal combo, believe it or not, there was another such group, and they were called the Beach Boys. And outside of the Beach Boys, there is no other person or group for whom Brian Wilson has produced nearly as much material as the HONEYS. And there's a whole lot of reasons for that. The HONEYS had the goods. This was not a case of nepotism, just a case of the best wanting to work with the best. And today, we have with us 2 of the 3 boundary-breaking ladies who've enjoyed incredible careers deserving of acknowledgement separate from their male counterparts. Although Diane Rovell isn't with us, I myself am figuratively pouring some out for one unbelievably talented lady whose style, grace, and aptitude has run the gamut for this gifted girl group. Our first guest, if they were a big deal and held a mic, then she was right behind them belting out backup. Her recording career preceded the HONEYS by a couple of years, and although her accomplishments within the group are extensive, her abilities allowed her to touch every known corner of the music industry, both with and without her cousins by her side. Lads and ladies, it's Ginger Blake!
Woo!
Yay!
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 Our next
Thank you,
guest,
Dave.
you're welcome. Welcome. Our
Thank
next
you.
guest, although once married to a pretty talented man, brought tons of her own talent to the table in that union, along with writing and singing some of the lushest, most elegant pop in music history. She's also both inspired some of the greatest music ever made and given birth to a multi-generational crew of honorary HONEYS. Her own 2 lovely daughters, 2/3 of Wilson Phillips, Carney and Wendy Wilson, not to mention the next generation, Carney's gifted daughter, Lola Bonfiglio. Lads and ladies, they invented the phrase patience of a saint for her. Without this woman, the group's incomplete. She's the secret ingredient that makes these HONEYS so sweet. It's Marilyn Wilson-Rutherford.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Woo!
I am so excited to have you here.
Thanks so much.
I want to stress that although you're here for like the loose umbrella thing of the Beach Boys, this is not a Beach Boys show. You happen to have crossed paths with Brian Wilson, but this is a show about the great work that you 2 ladies did, of which I am a huge fan.
Oh,
Thank you very much.
Thank you. That's so sweet.
Let's start at the very beginning. So in 1958, the Rovell sisters was formed. The trio initially comprised Marilyn. It was you, Diane, and your sister Barbara.
Yes.
Barbara was later replaced by Ginger, who was born Sandra Glantz. I love
Well,
that
it wasn't
name.
really replaced.
No.
I wouldn't put it that way.
No. Mm-mm.
So, okay, tell me then, I've been curious ever since I started listening to your music. What was the group like when Barbara was a part of it? And why did she never once come back into the fray?
Well, she actually did come back here and there years later, but to begin with, we were only like 7, 9, and 11 years old with the Rovell sisters. My mother was the piano player. My mother used to, play all the McGuire sisters and in that era. My mother was very musical, and she said, I'm going to teach you girls harmonies, and we can go on a little TV show. So we did. The Rovell sisters, we went on in those days, it was, it's kind of funny. It's kind of like, in those
kind of like
days,
American Idol in a way.
Yeah, in a way.
It's so prehistoric compared to American Idol.
It was a talent show.
Yeah,
and then people voted on who they liked the best, blah, blah, blah. Well, anyway, the Rovell sisters got the big trophy, the winning trophy. And during that time, because Ginger is our cousin, she was singing also at that time, but by herself. So she never replaced anybody, but things just grew where we started singing some backgrounds, and Barbara was too little.
And she just wasn't really interested in that part of it.
Okay. So music really wasn't in her heart. She had different interests?
Well, no, music was in her heart, but it wasn't strong enough for her to stay into it like we did.
Okay. But so are you impersonating groups like the McGuire sisters, or are you just singing songs like Ding Dong and Sugar Time?
Exactly. I mean, How can you impersonate when you're 11 years old?
Yeah.
A group like the McGuire sisters, right?
Just doing harmonies and singing.
Okay. So at that point in time, did you have career aspirations in the music industry, or are you just having fun?
Both.
Okay.
Both, you don't know what you're doing. You just know that you love doing it. And it just progresses as the HONEYS, we just kept getting artists that wanted us to sing backgrounds. And, we just kind of developed our own group within ourselves and, just kept going. But just quickly before, because I know Ginger's going to talk about this too, but my sister Barbara, as time went on, she did come back a couple times, but we weren't making any money, and she needed to make money to live. Yeah. So she worked, and a couple times she tried to come back and joined American Spring. We did a couple of dates here and there, and she had a very, very cute voice. We made a couple of videos, but it all just boiled down to always that she couldn't afford to take off time and do what we were doing, but she always did love it.
Mm-hmm. And Ginger, correct me if I'm wrong on any of this stuff. Please just jump in and just squash me, okay?
Okay.
But from what I have gleaned in my research, your career, you were in a studio by 1960, recording with Gary Usher.
We recorded for Titan Records. I recorded for Titan Records. My manager then, and the HONEYS manager, but then it was Mike Connor, who was our manager. He also had friends in the record business, and I had already written a double-sided record for Carol Connors, previously known as Annette Kleinbard, for Columbia Records. It was called My Diary on one side, and You're the Girl. Now you got me. It could be You're the Girl. I don't know now. It's My Diary, and so Mike thought, here out of about 200 or 300 acetates that came to Carol Connors, and Columbia Records chose My Two Sides to be her first single. He thought, well, maybe she can capitalize on this and sing too. So he called his friend George Brown at Titan Records and said, you should audition my new client, Ginger, and she's written a couple of songs for Carol Connors. And so one thing led to another. Long story short, I signed with Titan Records. And also, not related, they signed Gary Usher.
Okay.
Gary Usher was the male part, and I was the female. And they kind of put us together. Gary and I got pretty close, and he one day said to me, Ginger, why don't we go over to Pandora's Box? My neighbors across the street of my uncle's house are called the Pendletons, and they are recording, and they're now recording for Capitol Records, and they're going to be called the Beach Boys, and go over and listen to them. So we went and listened to them, and I knew that right away, the 3-part harmony, the 3 brothers and a cousin, and I'm 3 sisters and a cousin. when Bobby was there.
Yeah.
We thought this was just kismet. So we came back the second day. Marilyn came and Diane came. And, the rest is kind of history.
And by the way, I know that Marilyn, at least you have said that you're not sure of the date. I have the date as October 28th, 1962.
That probably is right.
So you come back the second night and Ginger tells you about this band that you should really meet this band and see what they're all about. And from that decision alone, you have had the extreme displeasure of retelling the spilt hot chocolate story. How many times over for the rest of your life?
Oh, many, 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 many. I mean, I had no idea. I was so young. I was 14. And I didn't know nothing from nothing, any group, anything. I was basically just going along with Diane and Ginger because I was so young. I didn't know anything.
You were 14 in 62, right?
Was I?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, 14, that's young. Yeah. So I have that date as October 28th, 1962. And is it safe to say that 2 years later, when Brian sings in All Summer Long, remember when you spilled Coke all over your blouse? He's taking artistic license with the Coke, but otherwise it's a reference to that night, right?
I don't think so.
Really?
I mean, I never even thought of that. I've never even thought of that. It could be, but I never thought of that, honestly, David.
I always figured that was a cloaked reference to me.
That's interesting.
Now, I have read that both of you knew that first night how huge Brian and the group was going to be already. Is that really true? If it is, what was it exactly that gave you that feeling?
I didn't feel that way.
No?
I didn't feel that way either.
Okay.
I just thought that they were cute guys up there singing, some good songs, and, you're into boys, you're looking at them.
I am not. So after that initial meeting, Brian's wheels start turning and he rechristens the Rovell sisters the HONEYS, which is a surfing slang term for sidekick chicks, which he plucked out of the Beach Boys song Surfin' Safari. And you ladies become the female counterpart to the Beach Boys. Did you at all resist? I know you were only 14, but did you at all resist being molded into an image other than the one you yourselves had crafted? Especially because it was a sidecar adjunct to Brian's thing.
No, who would even think of that? We were just thrilled to be there and be with them whenever we could.
Yeah.
We never thought of, like ourselves first or what we wanted to do and all that. That was never on our minds. It only it became part of what happened when Brian said, I love the way you guys, I want to hear you sing, and I blah, blah, blah. And Brian put it together in his head. And that's when we started getting excited. But we never, set out to do anything. Brian said, hey, I want to listen to you guys sing. We never thought, oh, we should get him to hear us sing. We never thought of anything like that. We were just thrilled to be there.
Did you, at any point along the line, as either the HONEYS or Spring or American Spring, did you come into your own where you decided, I have specific artistic inclinations and they involve this, this, and this? Or was it just take it as it comes like that night?
Take it as it comes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I mean, everything just happened as it was supposed to happen.
Yeah.
It was all natural. No one planned on anything. And it just progressed by us becoming friends and musical friends. And that's what happened. I mean, there was no pre-planning, no premeditation, no nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing like that.
I mean, I bring that up mainly because the HONEYS have their own thing. And sure, it's melded and blended into the Beach Boy universe, but you have your own vibe and your own take on things. And so in my mind, I'm thinking, if you never cross paths with Brian in that world where you decided to stay in that night, I think you would have gone on and had a career. And I'm just curious what that group would have been like.
Well, Brian is such a big part of us becoming who we were as the HONEYS, that it's hard to imagine it any other way. But if I had to imagine it, then I would say just by us doing backgrounds for
exactly
a couple other groups, other than Brian at the beginning, we probably would have been singing anyway together. and it may not have been called the Honeys.
Right.
It may have stayed, well, maybe it wouldn't have stayed the Rovell sisters because Ginger was in the group. But
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
but we don't think so because the name Honeys was from Surf and Safari. Early in the morning, we'll be starting out. Some Honeys will be coming along, and that's where we got the name the Honeys, because Honeys are like the girlfriends or the pals of the surfers.
Yeah. All right. So soon, Nick Vinay and Brian were producing you ladies. Brian became, one of you're basically your main songwriting collaborator, and the Wrecking Crew become your backing band for the most part, usually, right?
Yes.
We didn't really choose Nick Vinay. Capitol chose Nick Vinay.
Right.
Yeah. And, from everything I've gathered, he wasn't much of a producer. It was really Brian.
Yes.
Of course.
Yeah. In 1963 and 64, the Honeys released 3 singles on Capitol and 1 on Warner Brothers, and you provide backing vocals for a massive smattering of very important tracks. And in addition, Marilyn, you and Brian started dating almost immediately, right?
Well, kind of almost immediately. No, not really.
No, maybe 6 months, 3 months, 6 months.
Okay.
No, it wasn't that kind of dating. We were just always going out together or whatever.
Right.
All of us. And just Brian and I got closer than anybody else. And that's how it developed. That, we just fell in love with each other.
Yeah.
Well, and he also began spending a lot more time at the Rovell household than he did at his own turbulent household. And I have a theory. Okay, tell me what you think about this theory. The Honeys were to the Beach Boys as 616 North Sierra Bonita Avenue was to 3701 West 119th Street in Hawthorne. In other words, a happy place that Brian could escape to when things got too tense with his own family.
Well, that's not the reason. That's not the reason at all.
No?
No, not the reason at all. The reason is that we lived in West Hollywood. The music industry was in West Hollywood, and my parents accepted him as, as a friend and a wonderful guy. And it just started where it was like Sierra Bonita was like his home base, like you said, but it wasn't. It just happened naturally. I don't know how to explain it, but it wasn't.
We just found inspiration there.
First of all,
he found inspiration. Because he knew we loved to sing.
He didn't have to, he was already living by himself with Bob Norberg in an apartment. So he wasn't escaping his parents at all, but where would you rather live, Hawthorne or Hollywood?
Well, from everything I've heard, your parents were the most amazing people. And it sounds like a very happy and nurturing place to be. And I'm not pro or con with regard to Murray because I wasn't there. So I have no idea. But I know that from everything I've picked up, May and Irving were very nurturing, great people. And they were very patient, and they let a lot of people come in and out of their house and fostered a really incredible household that nurtured the kind of creativity that you guys and Brian and everyone had, right?
Right.
Tell me about Irving and May, please. Oh, hi, I'm Dave Gebrow. I threw my career as a licensed hearing instrument specialist in the trash, sold my house, and moved to the East Coast with my wife and 5-year-old son in order to focus on making the ultimate weekly podcast for music obsessives thrive. But weekly wasn't enough for me, so I bumped it up to 4 shows a week. Becoming a subscriber to Discograffiti's Patreon gives you access to hundreds of exclusive episodes. As a 2-show per week private, you get the weekly show by and for our Patreon family, the Discograffiti Soldiers of Sound podcast. As a 3-show-a-week lieutenant, you'll get early release, ad-free, extended director's cuts of the main show. They're the shows as they were intended to be heard. Plus, you'll gain access to half the Patreon archive and the upcoming Beach Boys Behind the Mirror companion episodes, which will feature dozens of special guests from within the Beach Boys camp talking about and rating their music. But as a 4-show-per-week major, you'll be drowning in a flood of must-hear binge listening, because I'll be bombarding you with episodes about super cool bands that are too subterranean for free Fridays. It's like going to music college, but with a tuition that makes all kinds of sense. Plus, our entire Patreon archive is yours. Discograffiti's Top 10, our Buried Treasure show, Rock Cousteau, our Slag Off show, Queasy Listening, and the Private Press with Paul Major. And all that for the price of only a cup of coffee a week. Times are tough, you say? Fret not, because there's a $1 tier. Or you could just join as a basic member and buy episodes piecemeal from our Patreon shop. Don't risk feeling badly about yourself by not giving. Check out patreon.com/discograffiti to find the tier that's right for you. Once again, that's patreon.com/discograffiti.
Well, I would say it was really funny because I always say this, that before Brian, my father was kind of like a grouch in our eyes. He probably wasn't, but as his daughters, and fathers can be, with discipline, and it just, we thought he was kind of tough, hardly ever laughed and blah, blah, blah. Well, the minute Brian came into our lives, he changed my father completely. Mm-hmm. My father loved him and became a funny guy and accepted everybody and was so sweet. It's really weird. I mean, it was such a blessing that he came into our lives. And my mother, who was hysterical and wonderful and loving and wanted to cook for everybody and feed everybody, everyone just enjoyed coming over. It was like
a safe house.
Let's meet at the Rovell house. You need a tailor. We'll send them over, and they were getting their suits made in my father's bedroom. And my parents never said no. They just accepted everybody because everybody was nice.
Yeah.
And it was exciting. It was an exciting life. It wasn't boring.
Yeah. Like out of nowhere. I mean, it had to have felt like almost overnight, I would guess. Your house kind of became a way station for some of the greatest names in music, right?
Yeah, a few of them, sure.
Tell me some of the people who wandered in and out of your house. Tell me some of those names.
Dean Torrance, Ron Wilson from the Surfaris. Who else, Ginge?
Johnny Rivers came over. We did some rehearsal with him, and Dwayne Eddy. All the boys. Dennis and Mike used to come over a lot.
It wasn't like.
Did Marshall Lee come over as well? Did Marshall? I can't remember if Marshall made it.
I don't remember that. It was just really. It wasn't. There weren't too many people. There weren't too many people, and that's why my parents could tolerate it. I'm sure.
Yeah.
It was basically the Beach Boys and Dean and. I don't remember, and of course, Ron Wilson. My mother loved Ron Wilson.
Yeah.
But, I don't remember too many other people.
No.
When Brian was no longer living with Bob Norberg, was Bob still around? The reason I'm asking this is some of the songs that they wrote together, really some of the most magical music I've ever heard in my life. And it's one of the strange question marks to me why that collaboration was such a short-term thing. And then Bob, I know he doesn't really do interviews and he kind of stays really, really quiet. Did he kind of just that friendship just took its course kind of thing?
No, but I can tell you one thing. My husband, Daniel, we're very close, and so is Ginger with Bob Norberg still.
Mm-hmm.
We never have left contact. He's been to our many parties, our house things. He's just part of the extended family kind of.
Yes.
My husband just talked to him yesterday.
Okay, good.
Yes, and, so Bob's definitely in the picture and always has been, always will be.
Yeah.
He's more private. Yeah. He doesn't want to do interviews. He doesn't want to do that.
No.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the work that he did, I hope it reaches his ears that it is massively appreciated. And not even the stuff that was released. A lot of the stuff that I've heard that was just left as acetates is some of the most haunting and magical music that I've ever heard. Really?
Well, he's very shy. He's very shy.
Well, you should talk to my husband, Daniel, one day, David, after this. And Daniel will tell you a lot about Bob and what Bob's doing and blah, blah, blah. Daniel knows his history very well.
I'd love to. I really would. Bob has a lot of respect for me. And, his privacy is one of the reasons why he has my respect. Just like the fact that you never wrote some BS tell-all book. You have my eternal respect for that reason as well.
Thank you. Thank you.
Let's go on to the Honeys now. Can you see this picture?
Yes. Is it Hollywood Bowl?
Do you have this picture?
I don't.
This is to show the world that we were the only group that the Beach Boys backed up.
That's amazing.
They played for us on many occasions, but just to let you know about this picture, we were the cheerleaders on Be True to Your School.
Of course.
So
let's talk about your first single first.
yes.
We're not quite there yet. On March 5th, 1963, 5 months after Brian dumped hot chocolate on you on purpose to make
Yeah.
you recorded both sides of your first single. Ginger had already been in a studio before, but I'm guessing this is your first studio experience? I'm talking about Shoot the Curl and Surfing
Yeah.
the Swanee River.
We did some
No, we did
backups
some recordings in
with
studios.
Elaine. Remember with Elaine? We were in smaller studios. Let's put it
Yeah,
that way. We weren't in Capitol Record Studio.
Okay.
Yeah, we sang in a studio before.
Yeah.
Okay, that's cool. Okay, so you're not brand new to this, and your first single on both sides, it's got Glenn Campbell and Billy Strange on guitar, Leon Russell on piano, and Hal Blaine on drums, which is a killer band for your first single.
And Don Randy on piano too. There was Leon and Don.
Oh, awesome. Okay.
And
by the way, I just spoke with Don a few days ago.
We love Don. We
best.
love Don. We try to do these charity shows with him and this other group, the Get Together Foundation. But there was the greatest musicians really in the studio. They were the golden musicians in the studio. They're Steve Douglas and Jay Maduri and our wonderful friend, Tommy Tedesco.
So your first single is a classic, Surfing Down the Swanee River. I mean, the Beach Boys as your backup group, you must have loved that.
We were just kids that loved to sing. And we had this record. We were amazed. All these musicians, we didn't really know them then.
No
we
idea.
knew how wonderful they were. We were in a studio at Capitol Records, I think it was Studio A. And all these musicians are coming to play. And our little song that Brian configured, he wanted an homage to Stephen Foster for Swanee River. So he decided to make it into a surf song.
Yeah.
And we'd go over to the Hawthorne apartment and rehearse all that all the time. But by the time we got to the studio, it was like, oh my gosh, there's a lot of musicians here. There were just so many great ones, so many great musicians.
It's probably better that you didn't know, because if you were aware of what was being set up for you, you might have been too nervous to go through with it, because, you were working with the greatest producer of all time, and you were playing with the greatest musicians of all time, and you were teenagers who just want...
Well, here's one for the books. There might have been 22 or 25 musicians there, but it was a 4-track studio.
Right.
So we had to sing with them.
Right.
And complete the song to their satisfaction with all the musicians. And there was like 1 track left so we could put some sweetening on it. We were in there like Frank Sinatra, all his band, and he sings and everybody goes, did we make it? Was it good? Was it good?
Yeah.
That's the way we thought of it.
And Ginger, not only that, but the A side is a song that you wrote with Diane. I mean,
right.
And so at this point, Marilyn, are you writing songs, or did you not quite?
No, I had no idea. And I didn't think I was talented in that way at all. I just knew that I could sing and, let them do that. If that was fun for them. No one asked me.
Was there a time?
She tells me.
So I didn't care. I had other things in my mind.
Was there a time that urge to write songs did kind of bubble up in you?
Oh, not until many, many years later.
Many years later.
When would that be?
Oh, God.
When we started...
the Ecstasy album?
Yeah, the Ecstasy album.
In 1983.
Uh-huh.
Wow.
Maybe I wanted to write a few words there and there. And had my
mostly, I'm sorry, Mayor, mostly we did any song that Brian told us to sing.
Right.
And he wrote for us. He'd sit with us. We like the one you can't have. He'd sit at the organ or the piano in Marin and Brian's house, and he goes, "Well, name some of the guys that you think are cute. Some of the boys. We'd name boys, and he incorporated it into the song. So we really never thought about that we needed to contribute any more than our voices.
Yeah,
right.
Because that's the way.
Exactly.
We never even thought about the Shoot the Curl was a funny thing. I mean, because I started writing, I was a telephone operator.
Yeah.
And on the radio, we started hearing things about, a surf movement here, Dick Dale, all that stuff. And I thought, oh, yeah, that's that terminology, Shoot the Curl. So I started writing that while I was taking calls as a telephone operator. And then when I had a little bit of it done, I said to Dee Dee, because Dee Dee was, just 1 year younger than me. Dee Dee and I were a little bit more compatible at the time because Marilyn was 3 years younger, and it doesn't seem like anything now. But then she was in a different headspace.
They always shoved me in the back seat. Okay, go ahead.
He's not wrong.
Yeah.
So wait, Ginger, did you have this song before you met Brian?
No, it wasn't before I met him. It was when I was still working at the phone company, but he only had Surfing Down the Swanee River.
Okay.
He didn't have anything for the B-side.
Which, by the way, became South Bay Surfer on the Surfer Girl LP.
What does that mean?
The Beach Boys eventually...
Surfing down South Bay River. Yeah.
Yeah.
I see. Oh, yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah.
I was still on Shoot the Curl. My mind was still at Shoot the Curl.
Shoot the Curl is the A-side.
Well, it wasn't. It was.
Are you sure?
It was. Yes, it was Surfing Down the Swanee River. If you look at
Surfing Down the Swanee was the A-side.
That's right, and Shoot the Curl was the B-side, and it was. We wrote it because they needed a B-side.
Okay, got it.
But DJs liked Shoot the Curl, and other people love Shoot the Curl, probably more than Swanee.
So that's why they flipped it over to Shoot the Curl, but it was meant to be the B-side, Shoot the Curl.
I mean, Shoot the Curl is the better song, I think, because Surfing Down the Swanee River is pastiche. He was doing that kind of thing with Surfing USA. He was taking Chuck Berry's song and putting surfing lyrics on it. At that time, he was enjoying twisting recognizable songs.
No, that's it. That's exactly right.
But you had an original piece that really, I think, spoke to people. It went to #1 in Sweden and Denmark. I mean,
it did.
That's pretty huge.
You know something, now that I think about it, Mayor, you didn't get a little bit of credit for Shoot the Curl, because I remember when we were all sitting together now and I'm thinking about it, you threw in a word or two. I mean, it's still something.
Right.
Oh, no, I saw a lawsuit.
Yeah. We're way past that. We're way past that.
No,
thankfully, Mike Love's not in earshot.
Oh,
Diane and Ginger had so much fun doing it, and I had fun watching them, and I wasn't jealous in any way. It just didn't. It didn't occur to me. They both wound up having a what is it? The contract number you got with
with Sylvester Cross American Music. We signed. Diane and I signed on to them as writers, contract writers, and we got paid a salary each week. We wrote country songs. We wrote some country songs, and that's why I say there's a lot more music than people know.
I know the song that you're referring to. It's "Darling, I'm Not Stepping Out on You."
Well, that's just one of them. That's just one of them.
That song is genius. That song is incredible. I love it.
David also, they were doing that, and I was thrilled for them, and they were getting a little bit of money. They were getting paid, and I was.
And you were going to Hollywood Professional School by that
Brian's
time.
Wife, and I was Brian Wilson's wife.
Exactly.
So, what do you think I should do? Stay with Brian or go right for the little whatever.
Exactly.
No, but Brian was encouraging you. Brian
he was.
You. Yeah, I mean, you weren't just being a wife. I mean, if he just wanted you to be married to him and cook and clean, you wouldn't have had a career. Right?
Cook and clean, no. I did that for around a month. I did it for around a month, and then I realized, wait a minute.
That's right.
We can afford a housekeeper.
That's right.
I don't have to cook and clean.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's how that started. Yeah, thank God. Yeah.
All right, so let's talk about your second recording session, which was held on May 16th, 1963, except this time it was only Nick Vinay. He wanted to take over, and Brian took umbrage with that, so both songs unfortunately stayed in the can for a bit. From Jimmy with Tears came out later on, but Raindrops, man, what a great song.
That's Jack Nietzsche who wrote that.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that it was Nietzsche.
Yeah.
No wonder it sounds like classic Spector Wallace sound.
Exactly.
And if it wasn't for the fight that Brian and Nick had, that could have been a big hit.
Yeah. Well, we're all about ifs and what if and bad timing. When Pray for Surf came out, the Southern evangelists thought it was sacrilegious. There was always some hiccup.
Yep.
And also, I think at that time, the Capitol Records, they said, this is the way I saw it, like, let Brian concentrate on the Beach Boys. We'll get Nick Vinay in there to
You're right.
to produce the Honeys, take his mind off of that. We'll just get Nick in there to, play around with the girls and do some songs.
Right.
Let me ask you a pointed question. Do you think that Capitol was in any way, shape, or form sabotaging your singles because of the Beach Boys?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
There was no promotion, really. I mean, it was, that's the key then. The key was to get us out there. I mean, if it wasn't for our manager,
Yeah.
getting us an agent with the GAC, which was like William Morris GAC, and we were with GAC first, we wouldn't have been really even doing little tours, little out of state shows.
Yeah.
They're the ones that put it together. That Capitol expended nothing on promotion.
I think they were just pacifying Brian.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Which is crazy because the material that you were creating was not only really solid, really good, but it was commercial.
Right.
So let's go on to your next single, which could be my favorite one. September 2, 1963, it was the release. It was recorded on July 24th of that year. Pray for Surf, which, Marilyn, I think that's your first solo vocal, right? Okay. And then Ollie Oxen, Free, 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 Hide, Go, Seek, with Ginger belting it out on the B-side.
Brilliantly.
I have a little theory about Pray for Surf, which is, first of all, let me say I love the heavy sax honkin' production. This one feels heavier and denser than Shoot the Curl. And overall, I think it's a better song.
Yeah, it is. Great song.
I know that it was taken off the market because of the word pray, and unbelievably, I think you unintentionally broke ground for the Beach Boys to be able to release God Only Knows without the controversy that accompanied your release. It's like,
I don't know. That's a nice thought, but I don't know.
No, I mean, because no song had been released as a single with the word God in the title.
Yeah, but God Only Knows came out so much later than that. Pray for Surf.
Only 3 years.
Was it 3 years?
3 years. Yours came out September 2nd, 1963, and God Only Knows came out in the spring of 66.
Okay, well, David, think about this. The Honeys were not a big hit anywhere. Right. So us being able to be sacrilegious or whatever, and by the time God Only Knows came out, do you think they were going to say no to Brian Wilson and to Capitol Records?
Right.
I mean, it was already years later.
Right. They'd accept anything the Beach Boys did.
Right. I mean, we had no say, and they accepted that.
Right.
And that was a classic example about Capitol Records dropping the ball and not promoting us with Pray for Surf. If they thought it was that way, they could have capitalized on that and gone into another direction, to another part of, like the West Coast, the Upper West Coast, the East Coast, all that stuff.
I also want to say for the flip that Ginger, your vocal on Hide, Go, Seek is absolutely
my favorite.
It's one of your best that you've ever done.
It is.
It has so much force in it that it's almost violent. And when I think about you appearing, when I think about you appearing on Beggar's Banquet, I would imagine that this vocal had a direct connection with you getting those kinds of gigs, because you've got an almost violent, it reminds me of Mary Clayton and Gimme Shelter, but 7 years before that.
Well, Mary Clayton was a good friend of mine. I called her baby sister.
Because of brothers and sisters.
Right. And I was the only, there was one other Caucasian person.
This is my favorite single that you ladies did. I love this.
Oh, yeah, great.
And the thing is, Brian loved R&B. That was his classic go-to.
Right.
Whenever he'd get on that piano, he'd go, dum, 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 dum. It was always that kind of rhythm and blues. It wasn't so much Beach Boy, da, 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 da. It was really that driving. And that song, just when he wrote that song and he said, "This one I think I want you to do, Ginger," I said, "Thank God. I love this song so much."
That's not the way Brian viewed the Honeys, though.
No, not the Honeys, just how he loved.
I'm just saying that when he thought of songs, he would say, okay, what would so-and-so sound good on?
That's true.
Let's feature her voice. She'd be great with this. And he knew that Hide, Go, Seek was in Ginger's range, and the way she liked to sing that R&B and sound dark,
Seriously, I mean, Ginger, just
it was
based on this vocal, I would be afraid of you almost.
No, it's true. And for instance, with Pray for Surf, I was the one with the low part that Brian wanted to hear.
The smooth, melodic, sweet sound.
Yeah, you have a sweetness.
He thought of each of us, our voices, what would sound the best.
Yes, you're right. Right.
That's the way he worked with us.
And, I'd Go Seek has elements in it. I'm hearing in the verses No Go Showboat, which is a song that the Beach Boys eventually did. And I think he took elements from Hide, Go Seek to use it in there.
Go, go, showboat.
Oh, I love that song.
Great
It's a great song.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a great song.
And then right around the corner, that next month, October 63, Be True to Your School. And I want to let you ladies know something. I don't listen to the album version. The only version that I like is the single.
Yeah. Thank you.
I'm kidding. Without the Honeys, that song feels empty to me.
Thank you. Thank you.
Really?
That means a lot to us.
You know, as Carl said about Smiley Smile, it was a bunt instead of a grand slam. Same with the album version of Be True to Your School.
It's so true. It's so true.
It really was.
Yeah. You know, they do, when I go to a Beach Boys show, which is quite often, and many through the years, and they start to do Be True to Your School, and they know I'm there, and I say to myself, why don't they ask us to come up and do the cheerleading? The audience would love it. Wait, you know, they never do.
Do you still see Mike Love's Beach Boys?
Oh yeah, all the time.
Okay.
Daniel and I were Mike and Jackie invited us on a Beach Boy cruise 2 years ago, and I, was one of the guest speakers.
Wow. They
treated us to a whole trip.
Cruise.
Yeah, cruise. Cool. It's fabulous.
That's awesome. Especially with all the water under the bridge and everything, for to be still going to the shows that's really, really cool. All right, so end of 63, one more single, December 2nd, The One You Can't Have, back with From Jimmy with Tears. What a great song. I mean, The One You Can't Have is as good as any girl group classic that is considered one of the girl group classics. It's up there with all of those. And the vibes or the Celeste on it, I'm not sure what the instrument is that's used there, gives it an added sweetness that for me takes it totally over the top.
No, it's great.
That also should have been a huge hit.
Yeah, should have been.
There were a lot of issues with that one, with mastering it. There was a whole issue about how they were going to master that record, and a lot of the background got buried. I mean, it's still a fabulous song, but Brian was not happy with the end result of that mastering.
I'm surprised. It sounds so good to me.
Well, if you really listen to it, what we did when we were as the Honeys, yes, we had lead singers, but we always wanted the vocals to sound the same volume.
Right.
We didn't want them to sound like background singers.
Right.
We want them to sound with the same volume. So if you listen to that song again, you'll see my singing, and then it's the one you can't have is the one that you want the most. It's like it's back there, but it really wasn't when we recorded it.
Right, right. It was really supposed to be equal, yeah.
Yeah, it was really out there, and Brian sang on it with us.
Yeah.
So were the two of you sticklers? Like, Brian has legendarily specific ears as far as what he's going for. And of course, in 1966, it went to such an extreme that he was the only person hearing things that no one else could hear. How about the two of you? Were you sticklers about some of these records you were making, or could you not tell the difference?
We wanted to sing on key. We got to really know our voices and what we could do and what we couldn't do. And if something was too high, we had to work it out because we didn't want to sound,
But you know what, Brian? Everything was up to him. He made all the decisions.
That's right. And we had that wonderful VSO machine.
Oh, that makes it go faster or lower.
Faster. Remember he speeded it up a little so I'd sound younger?
Yeah.
Hey, wait a second. That is a Murray trick. Murray did that on Surfin'.
Oh, did he? Oh, God.
Yep.
Didn't know that.
Well, I read it somewhere, so it must be true.
No, that's not true.
That's the problem. Yeah. That's the problem with that's the problem with all of the history of so-called pseudo history of where the Beach Boys were, what they did. There are only a few of us who know, and probably less that remember. But we know that what we're telling you is the truth.
Yeah, no. Listen, that's part of the reason why I'm here. Really, the main reason that I'm here is to find out how you felt about all this stuff. That to me means more than any of the facts. The facts are kind of dry, and that's for historians, but the emotional response to this wild ride that you had.
Yeah, it was a wild ride, and we really were so young. I don't know. I just, when Gary would say do something, we'd come in and do something for him. We didn't get paid.
Yeah.
We didn't get paid for hardly anything we did. All the things that we sang background on and stuff like that. We didn't get paid for Be True to Your School.
Yeah.
It was just because we did it and because we loved singing.
And Brian,
don't you say, Mary?
Yeah, and Brian gave us the opportunity.
Yes.
And, when he wrote it, he says, "Oh, you girls have to come in and do this."
Yeah, and we would just do it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we love doing it. If you want to know our personal feeling, for me, I love music. It's the center of my being is music surrounds me, and the Honeys, they just are a part of my whole life.
Yeah. The body of work that you accomplished, it's amazing that the whole thing kind of started as a whim, even though I know you were serious about it. It was kind of these things that happened to you. But then at the end of it all, looking back at this mountain.
Right. In retrospect, it's a whole lot different than when it was happening. When it was happening, we're going, oh my God, we get to do this.
Right.
I mean, that's the extent of our excitement. I mean, we were so excited to do it, but we had to do this, but it was never what's going to happen after that?
Right.
After we do this song, what's going to happen after that?
I would say most things were spontaneous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know?
So then in early 64, Brian lands a deal to produce the Castells for Warner Brothers. So he decides that, I'm guessing that Capitol is not paying attention or, enough attention to you. He brings you ladies to Warner Brothers and gives you a shot over there, seeing as aside from Denmark and Sweden, there was no chart activity at all. So,
well, there was in Japan.
In Japan as well, right. How well were you doing over in Japan?
We don't know because we never got any information, but we can tell you that when our girlfriend Frances started our fan club, we got so much mail from Japan. I mean, not hundreds and hundreds, but we got mails from faithful fans that had loved all our music. Yeah. And even when we recorded Ecstasy album, there's a Japanese version of it as well.
Yeah.
So in March of 64, you go into Gold Star. Correct me if I'm wrong. Did you play on He's a Doll and Love of a Boy and a Girl, or did you just sing?
If you can call it playing on Love of a Boy and a Girl, Brian played my bass. I had a little bass guitar, and he had a regular guitar. So he went from one to the other. I played that horrible piano track. And Diane, did you take the sticks, or did Diane take the sticks?
Not me. Probably Diane.
Diane took the drumsticks, and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
That was the big band. For Love of a Boy and a Girl.
That single. So He's a Doll, to me, what I hear in that. First of all, classic. It's another
polished.
Classic. Yeah, totally polished. But it sounds like, Brian, you're at another company, and it sounds like Brian is throwing everything he's got at this to ensure.
Have you ever heard the track alone without the vocals?
I haven't.
It's amazing.
You should listen to it with the wrecking crew. It's fabulous.
Yeah. It blows you over. Like if it's loud enough. It's like that Memorex commercial where the guy's hair is blowing back.
Yeah.
He's a doll as a treasure. I mean, just yesterday, I belonged to like the Sound Exchange and some of these companies that, send royalties. They look up royalties. Yeah. And yesterday I got not a big royalty, but I mean, we're talking like 40 years ago. I got a royalty, and the number one song on the royalty was He's a Doll.
Yeah.
Like 60 some odd dollars I got for it.
I'm sure I'll get some. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was still He's a Doll. It's just right up there. Yeah. When Sirius comes on the radio, when the Beach Boy channel came on, they used to play He's a Doll on there as well.
Oh, yeah.
It's so
good. Manheimer plays it.
The thing that really kind of piques my interest is the Love of a Boy and a Girl. It kind of opens up this strain of a type of song that you do where instead of trying, with all these singles to blow you away, it's very simple and stripped back.
Well, it's stripped all right.
But I love that. I mean, I think you ladies do great work.
How about the double mistakes in it with that? Remember, Ginger?
Yes, of course I remember.
Oh my God, it was
the sticks. We couldn't keep.
So raw.
Dee couldn't keep all the time for the stick, and it goes. But we would notice something like that. But let's put it this way:
it was even worse.
That's the least of our favorite songs.
Oh, really?
It was the worst singing it.
Oh, wow. Yeah. To me, that's beautiful, and I'm not hearing mistakes. Yeah, really, I love that song. I do.
Wow. That's great.
Girl, it was just so nothing. Like I don't know how to explain.
I know.
It.
Well, it's kind of like Diane and I wrote a song called "For Always and Ever."
Yeah.
But you love that song.
I do love that song. And speaking of the love of a boy and a girl, that year you and Brian get married in December '64, and "Girl Don't Tell Me" is written on your honeymoon. Talk about a guy who just can't help working all the time. And so what is it like being married to a guy whose muse literally has its way with him all the time? I mean, it's not even like it was in his control except to submit to what was kind of happening to him at any given moment, right?
Well, it just was, that's who he was. I mean, all about music, everything that was going on in his head. I mean, everything else was like second nature. The music was more important. It's not that it was more important. It's
you just respected what, he was doing.
Yeah, I mean, I loved it. I loved every minute when he was singing and at the piano and creating. I mean, that's who he was. That's who I fell in love with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It didn't bother me at all. I never, ever, ever said like, I don't want to hear anything, or I don't want you to sing, or I don't want you to. I never in all the years would even think of saying that.
Regardless of you saying it, like, I work on this show constantly. I put up 4 shows a week. And, just like you ladies, music is everything to me. Except for my family, it is everything.
Right.
Yeah.
And I know that sometimes this show feels like a mistress to my wife. And was there any element where you felt at all jealous?
Never.
No? Okay.
Never.
It's great.
I have to tell you, never. The only thing I hated was the groupies.
Yeah.
The groupies going after him. That I hated about it. But otherwise, no, I just accepted everything and loved it and, admired it. And that's who he was. And that's who I fell in love with.
This episode is brought to you in part by Bespoke LA. Located in the Fairfax district of Los Angeles, Bespoke LA is the modern podcaster's dream come true. It's got 2 podcast pods available, one with audio only and the other with both audio and video. Just think, you can start your own podcast tomorrow without investing a single penny in equipment. What, you don't have experience editing? Don't even sweat it. For an additional fee, Bespoke LA can edit your podcast. Or not, it's entirely up to you. Rates start at $75 an hour with discounts if you book 4 sessions at once. Go to bespokela.com/podcast. That's BSPOKELA.com/podcast for more information or to book your time today. And be sure to tell them that Dave sent you for a one-time 25% discount. Well, I mean, something that you said, because, being in December 64, that's when the supposed nervous breakdown happened. That's something that you said, Marilyn, which I'm quoting you directly. People say he had a nervous breakdown, but I don't believe it was so because he was able to resume his music almost immediately.
The next day.
Yeah.
Next day. It was a panic attack.
Right.
That's all.
It was a panic attack.
Everybody wants to make big things out of nothing.
But with Brian, the panic attack would be probably 10 times worse than a normal panic attack.
Right.
Right. I mean, because he was so demonstrative like that. He's what, I don't know what happened on that airplane or whatever, but he could have, who knows what he said, like, get me off. It was, I don't know what he did, but that wasn't a nervous breakdown.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
It was not. I know, nervous breakdown, you have to be hospitalized.
Right. But that month, December 1964, the 2 of you get married. He tries smoking pot for the first time. He has his quote unquote nervous breakdown.
I think we're getting out of topic. I think I don't know about Marilyn, but I know she's uncomfortable with you asking these questions.
I can stop. I just want to know her feelings on things, but I can certainly move on.
I'm just saying, there was a lot happening because Brian was growing, and people came up to him and he didn't know how to not handle things. I mean, he was just, learning about himself and finding himself.
Just to let you know, I'm a very open person, and my wife usually hates that because she's an introvert. I will go into it with a total stranger about a fight that my wife and I are embroiled in, and he just can never get used to that. So part of Brian's, the way that he's growing and moving toward his new music, obviously musically, he's growing and expanding, and it's becoming symphonic and sprawling. But then lyrically, there's like the early part of your marriage is, Pet Sounds, whether or not it's an accurate portrayal of your marriage. Was it hard to get used to having, his personal life out there, at least partially or cloaked within the lyrics of his new music in 65 and 66?
It's very difficult to answer that, because I don't know for sure. He had to be influenced by me, being his wife and being a woman and and in love and everything. He had to think of it had to be influenced in writing, but he brought these other people in to write with him. So many, and usually the way I remember Brian is he would always come up with the main idea of theme. The song.
Yeah, the theme of the song.
And then these other people would come in and, give their lyrics and blah, blah, blah. But I think with all these other people, a lot of the songs were a combination, of him and then the other people writing it and then putting it together. But, I can't say for sure that, this song was written for me,
I mean, I've heard you talk about how, at least in parts of your life, that you were sure that Caroline No was you, but I've heard that it could be, this person or that person. I won't name it.
No, like Caroline No was an interesting song because he was in love in high school with this girl, Caroline. What's her name?
Carol Mountain.
Carol Mountain. And, and that used to bug me because he used to talk about Carol Mountain, when we were married. He just was... He was a little mentally cruel to me at many times about things like that because he was just so innocent, He just would say whatever.
And not thinking about your feelings.
Yeah, not thinking about my feelings, Like if you talked about an ex-boyfriend in front of your new, boyfriend all the time, that kind of thing. But like with Caroline No, I mean, I cut my hair.
Yes.
And he said, why did you cut your hair?
Right.
Your hair's off. So wasn't that an influence in some way?
It was.
And that's the way a lot of his songs were written.
Bits and pieces of his.
There, and it may not have been specifically me, but maybe in the back of his mind it was me, or in the back of my mind it was me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Who could say? Who could say?
You Still Believe in Me could very well be you.
Oh, for sure.
You're not the little girl I once knew. I mean, and you know what? Even if it's not about you, even if it's completely not about you, and Tony Asher was writing about someone that he knew,
right.
I mean, he's making music that people are going to still be talking about and analyzing till the end of time immemorial. And some people are going to assume that it's about you and he. And
a lot of it was, and he could have been embarrassed to say something like that, But how else do you learn about love but with the person you're with, you know? So, don't put your head on my shoulder. I mean, how many times did we do that kind of thing? I mean, I had to be in there.
Yeah.
Who else was he learning it from? Wasn't learning it from the groupie.
No, but you respectfully, honestly, with a lot of respect for me, as I said before, you're a private person. So to live with your life, even if it is cloaked or embellished or not even at all about you, it must be a little bit strange for people to think that they know you. Right.
Well, I'm sure that, and I don't say this conceitedly or whatever, but I'm sure that I was the nicest person he ever met.
That's the truth.
Yeah.
Amen to that.
And that he loved me for that, and he loved my simpleness. Yeah. And, and that's why we stayed together, and that's why we were married, because he loved who I was. Right. And part of everything that, he wake up in the morning and you see somebody brushing their hair or whatever. I mean, all that stuff is in his head, and who knows what's going on in his head and what he's putting together.
Yeah. And for whatever it's worth.
Dave, I have to interject again. Please. I'm so sorry.
No problem.
The bottom line is nobody knows for sure who wrote what. How much did Brian throw down on a paper where somebody else filled in the balance? Right. Nobody knows at this point, except maybe Brian. Right. And the other one, Don't Worry Baby, was obviously about Mare, because she used to say to him, "Don't worry, baby."
Yeah. Right. And he never talks about that. But I was the one who said that to him. "Don't worry, baby," because he would be...
Everything will be right. Yeah.
Because he would be insecure about something. And I pictured this at the Rovell house. And I would say that, but no one ever... It's funny. I think I gave him that lyric. Sorry.
You did.
No, I mean... it's great how Carney has your exact laugh. It's so awesome.
And their voices are so similar, too.
Yeah.
Not now because it's hoarse.
All right, that about does it. Stay tuned because next week brings upon us part 2 of the Honeys, including all kinds of beautiful tales about living with Brian while he was operating at his creative peak. Okay, here's the week up ahead. This Sunday, our weekly show within a show, the Discograffiti Soldiers of Sound podcast, drops for our Patreon's private tier. These are real people with talent and a burning fire deep inside just like you and I. Then come Monday, the major tier gets a very special treat. And man, do I mean special. Monday's bonus episode is an absolutely essential must-hear. It's the Pet Sounds Timeline episode, with Wouldn't It Be Nice author Chuck Granata joining me as we take a stroll through Brian Wilson's daily activities from the moment he was struck by the gods of inspiration while listening to Rubber Soul for the first time to the day Pet Sounds hit the shelf. There will be a very short sneak peek running publicly for free on Monday morning, but the entirety of the show will only be accessible on the major tier of our Patreon. Don't miss it, or you'll only be getting part of the story. And then on Wednesday, the Lieutenant tier gets their early release, ad-free, super extended director's cut of part 2 of the Honeys podcast. It's the episode as it was truly intended to be heard, with all the essentials left intact. And then come Friday, everybody else gets to join in on the action. A heartfelt Discograffiti thanks goes out to my beautiful wife and son, Jen and Mason, Marilyn Wilson-Rutherford, Ginger Blake, Rudy Fishman, Becky Boyd, Jay Schultz, Bespoke LA, my mom, my dad, Joe Kennedy for that killer new theme song, my incredibly loyal fans, and especially the entire Patreon community, the Soldiers of Sound. I love every last one of you, and this show would not exist without you, my friends. Speaking of friends, it's high time for some new ones. They're in our Facebook group, Discograffiti Soldiers of Sound. That's the best way to find out what's coming up on the show, but there's a hell of a lot more. You get recaps of the day in music history, the ability to pitch questions to guests, polls that put you in the driver's seat on guest and band decisions, access to a thriving creative hub if you're looking for a collaborator, and much, much more. So make sure you don't miss out. You can find the link to the Discograffiti Soldiers of Sound Facebook page right there in the show notes. And if you don't mess with the Zuck, no sweat. Just email me at info@discograffiti.com and I'll keep you in the loop. So now that it's done and you want more, another way to dive even deeper into the classic rock and roll from the 1960s is to go to the Beach Boys Season 1, Catch a Wave, 1961 to 1964, from episode 189 on, the Righteous Brothers Bill Medley interview, that's 181 and 182, my interview with the Free Design, that's 160 to 162, my epic interview with the Mamas and Papas Michelle Phillips, that's 141 to 159, Blood, Sweat, and Tears, that's 137, my 12-hour interview with Terry Kirkman and Jules Alexander from the Association, that's 109 to 113, Vashti Bunyan reading her entire output, that's 103 to 104, Sergio Diaz from Os Mutantes, that's 86 and 87, Bert Summer, that's 83 and 84, Sweetwater is episode 79, a tribute to David Crosby, 77 and 78, Andrew Tuttle rates the Monks, 74, Jim Florentine on Black Sabbath is 64 to 68, Lou Barlow on the Zombies is 59 and 60, Marvin Gaye biographer David Ritz rates Marvin Gaye, that's 45 to 47. Blind Faith is 43. Anthony Fantano rates the Velvet Underground, it's 32 and 33. Bob Forrest rates the band is 25 and 27. Monkees manager Andrew Sandoval rates the Monkees, that's 22 and 23. Don Randy rates David Axelrod as 17. Badfinger is 16. The Bee Gees is 10 and 11. Sly and the Family Stone is 5, 6, and 7, and Pink Floyd is 1 and 2. And of course, be sure to mark your calendars, because next Friday, July 18th, we're coming at you with the Honeys Part 2. Trust me, you're not going to want to miss it. And so, from now till then, don't let our youth go to waste, lads and ladies. It's Discograffiti!